everybody, Jason Bermas here. We got a great show lined up for you today. It is the Deep in the Weeds segment. We get over the peace plan in the Middle East, the Israelis' dislike of Netanyahu, and so much more. I do want to remind you guys to support the broadcast. We got the links down below via the Buy Me a Coffee and the PayPal. We want to thank Marigold Resources, marigoldresources.com. If you're buying or selling a business, check them out. And always check out the River City's Reader over at rcreader.com for a great alternative perspective. Once again, we could use your support. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. Better now that I've heard that.
Theme song for you. So you've been hanging out with Scott Baio. You guys by the pool or what?
No, not.
Nicole Eggert there. Was Nicole Eggert there? I need to know that.
No. Yeah, I had this thing with Baio over the weekend. It was not quite as bad as the Vegas experience. And Baio himself was actually quite lovely. He was actually on a horror movie kick. I don't know whether it was because it was October or not, but we talked a lot of horror movies, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at least it was horror movies you were watching. I mean, if it was Charlie Sheen, it might have been a different thing.
We actually did discuss Sheen briefly because Sheen has obviously been in the news and continues to be on a podcast tour for both his documentary film and his autobiography.
Yeah, I want to see the documentary. What is it?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people have already watched this thing, and it's a series, so it's not just one. It's not a one-off. I think it's like 3 to 5 hours altogether. And honestly, the guy has been a part of Hollywood since his birth. His father was extremely famous, and it's not lost on him. He's talked about it several times on this tour that when he was 10 years old. He was he was out with his father doing this big Vietnam movie, Apocalypse Now, and then only 10 years later, he's doing this big Vietnam movie where he's narrating just like his father narrated the other one for Oliver Stone with Platoon. So, very interesting career on that guy.
Well, he was supposed to be a way bigger part of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Is that a fact? Why wasn't he?
So I don't know all the details. I know there was my friend Chuck with the Duck watched. There's like a show about Ferris Bueller's Day Off about the movie. Mm-hmm. And so in the movie, the way it was supposed to play out, Charlie Sheen was the son of the towing company. Remember the towing company that hauls away the principal's car?
Yes.
Okay, that's him. So that's his family, and they were supposed to be a bigger part of the movie. How or why it got cut down to what it did, I don't know. But it all kind of like tied together because his family owned the towing company that tows away Mr. Rooney's car. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know how he got cut down to where he's just like, drugs, when he's talking to the sister in the police station. I don't know. I don't know how that, how that came about. But, yeah, I guess he was actually supposed to be, a much bigger part of that movie.
Well, I mean, that movie is almost timeless, at least for our generation, and one that I continually go back to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I use it as background. I have like 3 of the Ferris Bueller songs from the soundtrack as background for news and stuff because I've probably seen that movie just over 1 million times. I don't know, a lot.
Just a cool mill?
I've seen it a lot. What's that? Yeah,
just
cool mill.
A cool mill.
All right. Well, now, a lot of stuff going on in the news as always. We've had, so far so good on the last 2 or 3 days of the ceasefire here on the Gaza Strip. I think it feels very much on thin ice, if you will, but so far so good. It's, I don't know. I'm to say I feel confident that this will hold out would be a lie.
Well, I would say this, Aaron, you probably should not feel confident that this thing is going to last. I wish that I were more optimistic. But there are a few things that I think need to be pointed out that just are not in our press in the United States. For instance, people know that the final hostages taken by Hamas during this October 7th event were released. Were you aware that there were a bunch of hostages released on the other side to the Palestinians?
Yes.
Did you see that release?
No, all I saw was that both sides were trading hostages. That's all I know.
So, alls I would say is this: if you visually watched any of this, and again, in the United States, we only get small snippets. Everything is curated. Obviously, some of these hostages' families have done numerous interviews. If you saw the way the other side was released, and look, I'm not trying to play team baseball, on either side. I want peace. I want this thing to last. I would like to de-escalate these situations. However, if you saw the quote-unquote hostages, first of all, they're not referred to as hostages by the other side. It's usually prisoners. Now, the release that I saw were of what seemed to be military-age men, but as I understand it, there were many hostages that were also released that were women and children, that Israel also had, something we do not talk about. But it was night and day. On one side, you kind of had this media spectacle, and it was being celebrated. And then on the other side, literally the first person that gets dragged off the bus is completely unconscious and needs full medical attention to possibly survive. That's one note that I would put out there. And to me, that doesn't seem to be in good faith of peace. Now, the other thing that I don't think many people in the United States understand is that the Israeli people do not like Netanyahu. Let me repeat this, all right? Not only do they not like Netanyahu, when his name was mentioned over the weekend as Trump was there speaking, Trump was getting standing ovations everywhere he went, Aaron. Okay, that cannot be disputed. However, and I'm not gonna play the video, but I'm just gonna show the still shot here of Steve Witkoff in front of Jared Kushner and Trump's daughter, Ivanka. As soon as he mentions Netanyahu in front of a crowd of thousands, you know what they get? Booed. They get booed in Israel. They don't want Netanyahu there. Netanyahu has been essentially in power for over 2 decades. He was briefly out of power just before October 7th, and then through some shenanigans was able to retake the prime minister role. They imprison their political enemies there, and many people are upset that there has not been a formal investigation into the events of October the 7th themselves. Now, Netanyahu has promised time and time again that there will be an investigation as soon as this situation is over and fully de-escalated. Well, now we are supposedly at that point. And I'm not saying that this investigation would not be a whitewash. I think there is plenty of evidence out there that a stand down took place and that unfortunately there were people on that Israeli side with those interests that wanted as much of a body count as possible. For instance, Aaron, are you aware of what the Hannibal Directive is?
I am not.
So most people are not aware of what the Hannibal Directive is. And essentially, the Hannibal Directive is a directive put out by the Israeli military, carried out by the IDF and others, that in a situation such as October 7th, where either hostages of the civilian nature or hostages of a military nature, in other words, your comrades in battle, are being taken, you don't allow that. And the way that you don't allow that is you kill everybody. Let me repeat that for everybody. The Hannibal Directive is a real thing where their military will kill their own so that they cannot be used as leverage later on. That directive was absolutely employed on October 7th to maximize the death count. Some other huge questions that have been put out there were military warnings that were coming not only in the weeks before, but a full year before these attacks. Independent journalist Ben Swan has done a great breakdown of this. But then there's just the obvious question. of how this thing was carried out and not immediately squashed, in the sense that Palestine, just for those that don't know, they not only don't have a military, Aaron, they don't have an air force. So the idea that a bunch of Palestinians are going to invade the airspace via paragliders and land for this attack without any opposition from the Israeli military that has the quote-unquote golden dome that can knock out the vast majority of missile attacks coming in is also ludicrous to me. So when you factor all of those things in, and the fact that Netanyahu came out multitudes of times, even here in the United States when he was visiting before Congress and the Senate, talking about how October 7th is their 9/11. Well, if it's their 9/11, then everybody's been lied to. And another thing I would
That's an interesting way to look at that.
I mean, 100%. And if you look at Netanyahu's comments about 9/11 while he was in power, like I said, the last 20 plus years, this guy has been in and out of power. He talked about, and it's almost a direct quote, actually Tucker Carlson put it in his recent documentary series on 9/11, that there is one thing that is benefiting Israel right now, and that is the attacks of September 11th, because that mobilized the U.S. military in the Middle East during the war of terror scenario and further emboldened Israel to take military action in that region over the past 2 decades. And if you've looked what we've done with that arena, it's not just Afghanistan, it's not just Iraq. Look what's going on right now in Syria. You know, that was very much a part of the plan. Even what has gone down with Iran recently and the strikes against their nuclear facilities, that obviously is very beneficial outwardly to Israeli policy. And Netanyahu had been calling for that time and time and time and time again. So I would just say this. We need to be on the footing where a large-scale event could happen in this country, Europe, possibly the Middle East, to be blamed on Palestine, Hamas, allies in those regions, Iran, etc., to reignite this conflict and possibly make it even greater than before, playing on the idea that Trump has brought peace and it's these people's fault. Now, I'm not saying that they couldn't be involved, but I am saying right now in their position, any kind of large-scale attack or retaliation, simply would not be beneficial to the people that are essentially in not just a war zone, but a totally and completely devastated area when we are talking about Gaza and Palestine. The vast majority of it truly has been leveled. And, I just saw Trump put out a Truth Social post yesterday. As there are reports that supposedly Hamas and the Palestinians are killing people within the Gaza Strip. That may be true. That may be 100% true. But Trump's reaction is to threaten to send ground troops into that region. And quite frankly, I think that is the wrong move. However, with the amount of devastation in the area, I think that is the only card that they are going to play. I expect Israeli, U.S., and possibly NATO forces in that region, quote unquote, rebuilding it, probably not in the same manner that it has been rebuilt in the past. I would assume that, Israel has not given up on the idea of annexing that area completely. And that is where we are in big trouble, in my opinion, because, again, I want peace, but I am not holding my breath over the next couple of months that is actually going to be achieved and that this conflict is over. I wish it were, Aaron, because it is extremely destructive and violent, and I don't like seeing dead kids of any nature, Israeli, Palestinian, or otherwise, in my newsfeed.
Me neither. And so that was one of the most disturbing things for me. By the way, we are deep in the weeds with Jason Bermas here, brought to you by River City's Reader on 80 in the morning. That was one of the hardest things for me, is seeing these AP photos popping up of starving children. And I'm like, this is so wrong. And one of the things you just brought up about us and Israel going in together to try to rebuild or police or whatever, I don't think Israel wants us around because then there's going to be conflict about what's actually happening. Because I feel like they've been, evil. Basically, I feel like they're like, oh, well, you came and attacked us. And so from my understanding also, and this may have been something I heard from you, I'm not sure, but so they had a different directive when they took off in the Hamas guys in the hang gliders or whatever. They had a different directive, but then happened to see a music festival going on. So they whipped it around, went back, and just started shooting them from their hang gliders from the air. Because it was like biomass. Oh, okay, well, we can kill some Israelis, let's do that. The whole thing seems very bizarre and hokey. And when it first happened, there was a ton of discussion about how in the world did Israel not catch this? How did they not know it was coming? Did they let it happen on purpose? And that was a big, I'll take that back. It was a brief, very brief discussion in some news outlets. I know one of them that I got it from was the London Times. I like to read some of the papers over there to just kind of see what their slant on things is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the London Times that had it's one of those stories where it hits the press and then it poofs, it disappears, nobody ever sees it again. Kind of like what was it? The lady in Florida, the Chinese lady in Florida that had what was described as a piece of technology we have never seen before. And she was taken into custody. The item in question was taken into custody, and you never heard about it again. I don't even think you can find the story anymore. And so there's stories like that. And doing the show for the last 10 years, I've definitely run into a handful of them where the story comes up and then it's just gone.
Well, there's a part of that story on October 7th that has only briefly been admitted in the media and never a headline and never an editorial or never digging deeper into that story. And that's the fact that U.S. Special Forces were on the ground during October 7th in Israel. Now, we do have, a permanent military base there. That does not necessarily mean that Special Forces will be there all the time. And we spent more Special Forces after the fact. I'm not saying that, the United States was doing anything nefarious, but you led that with, I don't know that they want the United States there. They may not want us there in the sense of us directing military operations, but they need us there in the sense that the vast majority of their weapon systems are provided by the United States, and there are certain systems that you simply do need U.S. personnel to operate in a proper manner. Now, that's less and less because Israel is extremely technologically advanced, and when they do business with our military, they do so in a cutthroat fashion as to the technology. They don't want to take any dips. In other words, they want whatever we're using top of the line, and they often get that. So with that whole...
Or their big stick.
Oh, they've got many a big stick for such a small country of only 9 million people without any real resources. And I'm glad that Tucker Carlson is starting to point out that reality, that they have way too much perceived power in the global arena. And yet you look at the physical size of that country and its resources. And honestly, if you were to go by those numbers and those resources, they're a nothing country. And instead, they are truly at the forefront of global and Western policy throughout the world, whether we like it or not. A lot of that has to do with the influence in this country via organizations like AIPAC and others. But a lot of people, especially after the last couple of years, have started to come to this realization and the realization that this cannot simply continue.
Well, I mean, their resources that they've been making interest since biblical times when no other, initially the Christian religion wouldn't allow that. And so they became the world's bankers, and they still are. And I've kind of figured that was where their major resource was. Obviously, they own a lot of banks.
Well, I'll say this,
A lot of
Aaron.
these are Jewish owned.
Yeah, they may be Jewish owned, but they're not Israeli owned, right? And this is a nation state that we're talking about.
This is a group of people that adhere to a religion that they consider to be a different race. And that's their words, is it not?
Well, again, it really depends
I'm
on.
just saying Israeli Jewish is that's two hands locked together. It's not. It may be separate, but it's the same, in my opinion, or at least that's the impression that I get.
Well, here's where I'll go. I think that the issue is extremely convoluted, purposely, to try to curb any kind of legitimate critique of that nation state by saying, oh, you just hate Jews. But then you look at the term quote unquote Jews, right? Are we talking about religious Jews? Are we talking about ethnic Jews? Are we talking about Jews that are more secular and casual in their beliefs? Are we talking about the hardcore Hasidics, Orthodox, the people that literally wear the black cube on their head? I don't know that many people are aware of those, but you have all these different extremities, and I don't think it's necessarily one thing. When you look at the interests that created modern day Israel, then you could get into, the banking aspects, the Rothschild family in particular, and the term that's now also made a resurgence, Zionism. And for those that are kind of unaware of they may have heard what a Zionist is, and it's certainly an expansive definition, but the term comes pre-World War I, and it comes in the idea of creating a nation state for Jewish individuals. And essentially, these Zionists were promised that they would get that Holy Land post-World War I, and that did not happen. During even the run-up to World War II, they were pressing this, and it was only really after World War II, via alliances with the West, with Britain, with the United States, that essentially did take place. But then you look at the initial size of Israel after that military campaign, and you look how much land they've taken since, they have only expanded that land time and time and time and time again. And as far as, this supremacy question, the idea that they are God's chosen people, right? There are certainly religious and some ethnic Jews that believe that. The vast majority that I've met that are of a secular nature, that are my fraternity brothers, that aren't in that geopolitical arena, they don't believe that. But at the same time, they can be very loyal to Israel, as many of them have visited Israel. I don't know if you know this, but if you are an American citizen and you are, quote unquote, ethnically Jewish, and your mother is ethnically Jewish, that's a big part of it, they'll send you to Israel for free. You know that?
I did not know that.
I know people that have went on that trip. So in this country, again, your mother has to be ethnically Jewish, but you can go on a fully paid trip to Israel, to the Holy Land, and obviously this is indoctrination into the ideals of that nation state and trying to get more and more people aligned. So, I don't think it's one thing. I do think that, yes, obviously there are certain interests of a financial nature, like you said, but there's also certain geopolitical interests. I think that's where our allegiance comes in line. Again, Israel is almost like a Western permanent military base against nation states, that may be a little bit more rogue, that are Muslim in nature. Even though we work with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia also works with Israel, there are tensions there. There are conflicts there. Obviously, we talked about some of the nations that have been labeled as enemies, whether it be Syria or Iran. As far as financial interests, you have the military-industrial complex, which we're talking, hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that they're heavily involved in. But at the end of the day, it's not like they have lumber. At the end of the day, it's not like they have massive lithium mines or anything like that either. So really, their resource, I think, is the fact that they have aligned themselves with military powers. And then the other big one is, look, you have religious zealots all over that, like you said, this is the quote-unquote Holy Land, that want to see Jesus return. The Jews themselves obviously do not believe that Jesus is the Messiah, so they're just waiting on their Messiah. They're waiting to actually destroy the Dome of the Rock and rebuild it as Solomon's temple. And then you have the Christians, or the quote-unquote Christian Zionists, that want to encourage this because they believe once that happens, then their revelations take place. And essentially, that God, that return, that Christ figure for the Jews becomes the Antichrist in our Bible. I'm not trying to accelerate anything biblical, and I'm certainly not trying to accelerate anything that would cause, if you've read the book of Revelations, Aaron, bumpy ride. Bumpy ride.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely bumpy ride, and some of the weather they predict in Revelation seems to be kind of on point. I will say that. But, I've never really understood. I don't care if someone's Jewish. You know what I mean? I know plenty of Jews. Like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me. But the amount of just global hate is just insane. Like, some of the things that we've seen at these universities, these very prestigious, high-dollar universities out east, where, I mean, there's video, I can't remember if it was Harvard or Columbia, one of the campuses, there's a group of Jewish people, kids, meeting out in the quad or whatever, and like on a grassy knoll, and then you get these anti-Jewish protesters, which are allowed to basically just run around and do whatever they want. One kid's wearing a mask, and they come up, pushes one kid, like, I'm like, what? Like, you're just letting these kids be attacked on your campus, and then they don't do anything. Mm-hmm. They don't do anything to these kids in the masks that are attacking these Jewish kids. I'm like, how the hell is that okay? You know what? If the roles were reversed, I still wouldn't think that's okay. I don't care if it's Palestinian kids meeting and talking about whatever they're talking about. If a Jewish person came up and started messing with them, I wouldn't think that's right. I don't think it's right. Like, just, I don't know. I don't get the generational, seemingly hereditary, just hate. Like, I just check it out, man. Just get over it. I don't know. That's the one. And I know there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of, like, with the banking and stuff like that, a lot of that goes back hundreds, thousands of years, whatever, but I don't know. And in my opinion, Israel couldn't have a worse leader than old Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, because they don't even like him. He was about out, then this happens, and then they're like, uh-oh, better bring Netanyahu back in. And it's too bad, because I feel like maybe some of this stuff could smooth out a little bit if he wasn't a central player anymore.
Well, I really liked how South Park handled it several weeks ago, maybe about a month ago.
Yeah.
If you didn't watch the episode, and I would assume a lot of you out there didn't, but you can go check it out, I think, on Paramount Plus. Essentially, they were talking about poly markets and being able to gamble on everything. So if people don't understand this phenomenon, there are these markets out there where you can bet on who's going to be the next president of the United States. You can bet whether there would have been a ceasefire or a peace deal. Just about anything globally that's in the zeitgeist you can gamble on. So all the kids are using this app, and essentially Cartman starts one where Sheila Brovlovsky, the Jewish mother of Kyle, goes over to Israel, and she bombs a Gazan hospital, okay, and how likely that's going to be, right? So, the whole gag of the episode is he's getting people more and more to bet on it, etc. And by the end of it, Sheila actually does go to Israel. So, they're kind of trying to set it up that you're going to believe that she's going to bomb a hospital in Gaza. Instead, she charges into Netanyahu's office and essentially starts cursing him out for his military aggression in the region, and essentially blaming him for making it much more difficult for Jews in the United States, which he absolutely has done. I hate it whenever anybody goes this, the Jews, the whites, the blacks. You can't categorize people fully by race, religion. We're all different individuals. And look, we talk about that Vegas trip. My buddy's name is Goldstein. He's about as he's about as New York Jewish as you could absolutely get. He hates what's going on in the Middle East. And right now, honestly, is looking for work and feels like one of the reasons he's not able to find it is because of this wave of anti-Semitism that this country does seem to be going through in some part. And that's unfortunate because, to me, the highest way of honoring somebody else and those around you, the truest forms of love, are judging somebody, yes, by the content of their character, by their actions, by how they treat others around them, not something superficial like a skin color or even a religion. Because the vast majority of the religions out there are some exceptions, are ones that do teach peace and love and cooperation and working with your neighbors and building communities. They do not preach constant hate and division, death and destruction. And I think that we have to understand that, and we have to take that into account when we see these things play out on a global stage, so that we don't bring them back to our homes, to our neighborhoods, to our communities, because ultimately that is just completely and totally destructive and detrimental.
I couldn't agree more to humanity. We are deep in the weeds with Jason Bermas, brought to you by River City's Reader. Well, one guy is not helping not feed into the... You heard of Governor J.B. Pritzker, a Ukrainian Jew guy who just won $1.4 million playing cards in Vegas on a single trip?
Booyah! Big time Pritzker, huh? I did see that story. I mean, when you're a billionaire family, $1.4 million, that's like a pack of chewing gum, folks.
Yeah. He says he's donating it to charity and whatever, but not helping, not feed the line there, Governor Pritzker. I hope to get that lucky someday myself. I brought up the idea of if you're a casino owner out in Vegas and you're kind of looking at one in Chicago, let's make sure the governor has a good time and goes home a winner this weekend.
Well, I'm kind of surprised he's putting it towards charity. If I were him, I would put it into my all-you-can-eat buffet fund, and that'll be, flush with cash for a good month for a guy that size.
Agreed. I said, Vegas is down like 40%, and I said, Governor Pritzker must have hit the buffet. There goes the profits. It's all you can eat, not can you eat all. Anyway, so I don't know. I got my fingers crossed here that this thing kind of just plays out, and we somehow, I don't know what's going to happen on Gaza or how that's all going to go. I am thankful that I'm no longer seeing photos on the daily from the Associated Press of starving children, though, because that's it's what sucks is it feels like what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. You see this stuff and it bothers you, it upsets me, but what do I do aside from don't look? That's always an option.
And let me say this: not looking is not a solution. I'm not saying that you should seek this out. But I like to put this in my thumbnails quite a bit. The hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, monkeys. The truth of the matter is ignorance is not bliss. And if we are going to build a better world, we do have to confront these type of evils, unfortunately. And like you said, I really do hope that this lasts. And frankly, I hope this also extends into the Russia-Ukraine conflict and that Trump can somehow, some way, de-escalate that, whereas he's spouting off that we're going to sell Tomahawk missiles to the Ukraine, and obviously Russia looks at that as a raise in the type of military aggression and capability. He's supposedly talking to Putin this week about that very subject, but one of the things that Trump has now basically bought into is the idea that it's okay to arm Ukraine with this U.S. military equipment as long as they buy it from us and we're not funding it. The idea that the United States is going to be the world's gun store, and that is not an idea that Trump has espoused. Instead, it's an idea that people like Lucky Palmer, the head of Anduril, which is this military-industrial complex contracting company at the forefront of new weapon systems and drones. He's very open that that's what the United States needs to become. And he is backed by others, such as Peter Thiel and Alex Karp of Palantir in that mindset. And I think that they have heavy influence on Trump himself and the entire administration. I want to see him move away from that. I want to see him move away from NATO. And frankly, I think that the vast majority of us that voted for Trump wanted to see all of those things. We were anti-war. We were anti-NATO. We wanted to see peace in that region and the Middle East. And I can only be hopeful that he can try to deliver on that.
Well, I guess so far so good? Question mark. I don't know. I know I saw Ukraine put out they need $120 billion for 2026 for the war. So I don't know if everybody can just write a check. $10 a head. We'll get there. I don't know what that looks like, but that's what they said. Their estimate is they need $120 billion to make it through another year of war with Russia. And what the hell are we even doing there at this point? You've lost every fighting age person in your country. You're stealing old guys off the street and handing them guns. I mean, what are you doing? Is Zelensky just trying to make himself more of a global player? Is that what this is about? Innocent people dying so he can be a bigger deal? Like, the fact that he won't just, strike a deal, figure it out. You're going to have to cede something to them because they already control it. And, I mean, it is what it is. It's not great. It's not what you want. But it's either that or just lose your whole damn country.
Well, again, Trump is out there talking about how, Zelensky might be able to take back some of the region now. And I'm like, this is insane. No. Well, again, Trump recently, in some of these speeches, has said things that should be totally and completely alarming to that base that is anti-war. I mean, from the idea that we changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War again, to him sitting up there on stage with Pete Hegseth, bragging to the audience that he called out Osama bin Laden a year before the 9/11 attacks. Oh, really? You've questioned the 9/11 attacks. You said that we don't know the truth about the 9/11 attacks before. You've questioned how the buildings came down. You've questioned the Saudi Arabia involvement, but now we're going back to the official story?
Well, he took the presidential blue pill or whatever, like, oh no, that's the narrative. That's what we're going with.
It's just extremely troubling to me, especially because I know people like Tucker Carlson are in his ear. He has to be aware of that documentary series that Tucker has put out. And I think that the first 3 parts of that, maybe even 4 now, Aaron, I may be a week behind, are available for free on TCN over on YouTube. And that brings me to some big news for Jason Bermas. Aaron, after 5.5+ years, they pulled my monetization back in April of 2020. I have now been fully remonetized on YouTube. I didn't think it was going to be possible, but when Google lost that recent court case where they came out and essentially said that they were going to start reinstating channels and that quote-unquote conservative, even though I am not a conservative voice, were going to be allowed back on the platform, I thought to myself, well, I haven't reapplied in a long time. They always, in the reapplications over the years, I probably reapplied 3 times over the past 5 years. Every 6 months, they would give me an opportunity to do so. But they always said, take the harmful content off of your page. Take the controversial content off of your page. I've got over 3,000 videos on my page, and I can only imagine what they would deem quote unquote harmful.
So could you give me a description of harmful, please?
Yeah, I don't think that any of my content has been harmful. I have hurt nobody, and I think, quite frankly, putting me and placing my speech in that category would make them liable for defamation, as that is just Johnny nonsense. So on September, I think 22nd, I said, hell with it. I'm going to go for it. Let's just reapply. We're not going to take anything down. We're going to hit the reapply button. And normally, in those 3 times over the past, 5 years or so, when I've reapplied, I've been rejected within 48 hours max, usually within 24 hours. Essentially, they're like, no, we're not remonetizing you. No, you still have harmful content, blah, 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 blah. This one lasted for about 3 weeks. And 2 days ago, I just got done brushing my teeth. I was about to jump in the shower, and I was just going to my YouTube studio, hit the button. It was taking a while for my page to load. My first reaction was, oh my God, I hope they didn't take my page. And then all of a sudden, I got a big splash page. You have been accepted in the YouTube Partner Program. So we are so back. We're now really trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. I had my good friend and comedian, Kurt Metzger, on yesterday. Big shout out to Kurt. Definitely got me a couple hundred subscribers since yesterday afternoon. But we're well on that journey. I want to get to the 100K. I think that I can actually make this financially viable again. I may be able to quit this soul-crushing job that I want nothing to do with, Aaron. And
that's not talking to me. That's something else you got going on.
Yeah. No. I love this gig. Listen. I love you. Yes, exactly. Like I said last week, I'm just so happy that I've been able to have such a strong niche audience. But we want to expand that. I'm not trying to, preach to the choir. I want more and more people to look at this information. And frankly, the only thing that worries me with growth is I don't want to be famous, man. A lot of people I know that are in the YouTube game or the talk radio game. Obviously, I don't think yourself, but that business to try to get famous. Fame sucks. I am not a huge fan of it. I like my privacy. Even when I was watching a recent interview with Steve-O. Steve-O has this podcast where he's got a van and he interviews people in the van. And he had Preston Lacey on, who's another member of Jackass. He's the rather portly gentleman that is the ass end of many of the violent pranks and stunts. And Preston Lacey's up there and he's just talking about his privacy. And he's like, yeah, no, I like my privacy. He's like, I don't know anybody that doesn't, but quite frankly, the position that I've been put in can, put you in an uncomfortable spot a lot of the time. I was also watching an interview via Club Random with Bill Maher and Seth Green, Scott Evil, for those that are trying to visualize him.
Scotty.
Yes, Scotty. And
Scotty don't.
And he's talking about fame, and he goes, one of the things is that if you're really famous, that goes with you throughout the rest of your life, whether or not you're rich. And he's like, a lot of these people no longer have money, but people just assume it. And he gave the example of Gary Coleman before he died. Gary was one of the most famous people in the world. You were paying Charles in Charge earlier. Well, Different Strokes, they say Different Strokes to Rule the World, was just as big, if not bigger, in that time period. And Gary had essentially been fleeced of all of his money by his family and was working security on Hollywood lots with no money. And can you imagine being in that position where you're globally famous and you're making $25 an hour max on this job that, let's be honest, you can't really do properly because you're not even physically capable of doing it properly. I mean, no offense, Gary. Rest in peace. But if I'm a criminal and I'm trying to break into a lot, I'm probably picking the one with the security guard that's 3 feet 5 inches tall and not the 6'2", 200-pound guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's go for the diminutive security guard. Yeah, I'm with you. I understand that completely. You're talking about and of course, Jason's got a show, Making Sense of the Madness, on YouTube TV. I want to make sure people know how they can get in on this or get to your stuff. Just, now that you can actually
You can
possibly-
search me and find me now. It's incredible. Like, now that I'm monetized, so many doors are now open. You're not going to type in Making Sense of the Madness. Instead, my channel is The Info Warrior. But if you type in Jason Bermas, Bermas, into YouTube at this point, the first thing that should come up now is my channel. Please subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, and usually at least once a day, 7 days a week, you will get a new video. We will be posting this in video format sometime later this afternoon. I've actually got another show coming up after this. And then, Aaron, it's Christmas in October for Jason Bermas. Today is the big day, night one of Caged Aggression, the big show, XL. And I'm going to be calling fights tonight with Jens Pulver, and tomorrow with Big Tim Sylvia. And this is his maiden voyage in the broadcast booth with Caged Aggression. The main event tonight is badass. The co-main event tonight is badass. The card in general has 12 amazing fights on it, 11 on Saturday. And if you are in the Quad Cities area, and if you're listening to this, you are in the Quad Cities area, there are still some tickets available. You can come down to the River Center and check out these badass fights. Or if you're more comfortable staying in your home, or maybe you want to go to your local bar, you can go to cagedaggression.tv and get the pay-per-views both nights and watch it in real time and watch me run my mouth about something other than geopolitics, Aaron.
How about that? It's about fighting. So, you know, that they kind of run together a little bit. There's some similarities there, you know. How long have you been doing the fighting gigs?
So, you know, I've been a super fan since I was a kid. It's funny. We actually, and when I say we, me and my friends actually got UFC #1 back in the mid '90s when it launched, right? So we rented it.
Wow.
Yeah, we got it on
paper. On a VHS?
No, we got it on pay-per-view. We got it on so this is back in the VHS days, well before DVDs. And when it initially launched, you could buy it on pay-per-view through your local cable broadcaster. Now, in short order, I think within the first several years of the UFC, New York State was no longer able to do that because of people like John McCain, actually, that had called it human cockfighting and then regulated it out of a lot of the East Coast states. You know, there's that famous UFC that had to be moved because the commission basically pulled the plug and they couldn't even fight in this arena. So it was banned completely from New York State. So, you know, my college days, I wasn't really watching it. Even, you know, when I first got into the geopolitical arena and the internet was out there and I was concerned with things like 9/11, et cetera, I had pretty much moved on because there was nowhere to watch it. My brother, however, started renting the DVDs, and he became even more and more of a hardcore fan. And I'll never forget it. During the Loose Change days, we had a little extra scratch. We were making some money. And my brother had come over. He wanted to watch a non-UFC event, something called Pride in Japan. Pride's no longer around. It was absorbed by the UFC eventually. But essentially, instead of being in a cage, you were in a ring. And there were even less rules than the regulations that kind of got it back on television in the States, in the sense that they allowed kicks to a grounded opponent, head stomps, you name it. And my brother came over and we watched this Pride event where the main event was, I believe it was Gomi versus Nick Diaz, Nate's brother. And the other one was Dan Henderson versus Wanderlei Silva. And I just fell in love all over again. I'm like, man, how am I not watching this sport? So it is the sport of sports to me. So big fan through the years. You know, Big Tim Sylvia, I still remember when we were trying to get Loose Change in theaters. I believe we were out in Hollyweird, and I was watching him versus Randy Couture in that battle, that 5-round war. And now I'm calling fights with the guy. So when I came to Iowa, now 5 years ago, so I'd been demonetized prior to coming to Iowa, everybody. I actually got here the first week of October. So it's my 5-year anniversary last week. And just about this time, 1 or 2 weeks in, they were having caged aggression event. They usually take place in October and March. Every once in a while, we throw a one-nighter, which we did this year in July. So I showed up. I think the first night I couldn't get front row tickets. They were all sold out, so I had to get general admission. That was fine. Every seat is great there, folks. So if you're on the fence, there's not a bad seat in the house. The second night, I was able to get cage side seats. Jeffrey Wilson, who was Pat Militich's co-host on The Conspiracy Farm, I'd known him for some time, and I'd also done the show. He was calling fights at the time. And so after the show, he came up to me. We started talking. He introduced me to my now very, very good friend, Justin Holstein, who does some of the video production on it. And Holstein was a fan. He had seen Loose Change. He'd seen some of my stuff with Alex Jones. I went to the after party. I would meet some other people that have become really good friends over the years. And at first, there were those that were kind of razzing me, and like they wanted to talk about aliens and shape-shifting lizards and, flat earth Johnny nonsense and all the stuff that, gets associated with people like myself if you don't know who I am. And in short order, I'm just knocking pins down. I'm like, all right, let's get into reality. So the next day, I actually get a phone call from Justin. Hey, what would you think about calling the next fights? And I'm like, I think that would be fantastic. So I get here in October. March of next year will be my 5-year anniversary calling these fights. So I've been doing it now almost 5 years. It is just so great to watch some of these kids come up and now get into the UFC. We had a few people fighting on Dana White's Contender Series this season, which just wrapped up on Tuesday, but some of them actually getting contracts as well. I can't even tell you how excited that makes me that I'm part of an organization that is seeding mixed martial arts on a global level and hopefully breeding future champions.
A fight guy. Hey, don't let Alex Jones find out you got monetized again. He might hit you up for some money.
Wait, Alan Jones? Which one? Are you talking about John Jones? John Jones got plenty of money.
Alex Jones.
Oh, Alex. Oh, poor Alex.
Yep.
That's something we should talk about, right? We should talk about
1.2 billion or whatever.
1.4. 1.4 billion. So,
not bad.
So let's talk about that really quickly.
We got a couple minutes here.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Alex Jones was sued by not only the Sandy Hook families, but also this FBI agent over some of his reporting on Sandy Hook. Now, I'm not here to apologize for Alex Jones's incorrect position at that time of Sandy Hook when he clearly stated on his broadcast that he felt it was a synthetic event with actors, etc. I have never taken that position. I don't take that position because I've looked at the evidence. I've never said that the kids didn't die there. Again, I was one of the few guys, Aaron, and I'm honestly, I bet you I'm one of maybe a handful, maybe 10 people in the United States that actually went and downloaded the full Sandy Hook file that was made available by law enforcement in, I believe, 2013, about a year after the attacks. Now, these were PDF files of pictures of both the crime scenes at Lanza's home and the school themselves. This was body cam footage. This was footage of the school after the fact that law enforcement took from inside. Yes, a lot of it was censored, but there was enough there that obviously I could make the very real statements that it had happened and that there was misreporting. If Alex Jones got that wrong, which I believe he did, he does open himself for certain defamation lawsuits, right? However, this FBI agent was never somebody that he mentioned. Out of the family members, I believe only one person was mentioned, and that was Robbie Parker from this infamous video that is extremely bizarre. I'm not going to lie, but I don't think proves any guilt. And that's it. Okay? When he went to trial, the guy seriously was defaulted because they said that he did not provide them with the emails and communications where they had marketing meetings on how to profit from Sandy Hook, because that never happened. As somebody who was on the inside of InfoWars and in communications with them, actually warning them not to go down that route during the Sandy Hook era, I can tell you, prior to that, there was never, ever, 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 ever one meeting where we talked about a geopolitical event, person, organization, that we said we need to take this and exploit it for money, or we need to profiteer from this. That was never the direction of InfoWars, no matter what imagination land some of these people are in. So,
if that were the case, I think you'd have more money.
I mean, you would think that, right? Yeah, especially a guy like me, right? If I was trying to, I'm not. And to Jones's credit, he'd never done that either. So they said because he didn't give them that, he was guilty out of the gates. So that jury that you saw at his trial, it was never guilty or not guilty. It was always how guilty. Now, even if you found him the most guilty, like he had actually done what they said, $1.4 billion for a talk show host on a lawsuit? Did he kill anybody? I mean, when we talk about $1.4 billion, shouldn't we be talking about pharmaceuticals that have been used and actually killed people? We live in a country, Aaron, where medical malpractice is the number 3 killer in our country. People die, and their families don't even get millions. Forget about $1 billion plus in some case. But yet, this guy's words hurt people so badly that they ruled $1.4 billion, and somehow, some way, the Supreme Court of the United States has now upheld that ruling. Completely insane, and it sets a horrible precedent that just about anybody out there, if they do not like your speech, okay, that's what this is about. If they do not like your speech, they will not only wage lawfare against you to ruin you and take you down, they will do so in a manner where they will try to completely cripple you in your future endeavors with monetary sums that are completely and totally insurmountable for a human being to come up with.
Well, I mean, J.D. Brisker might win that next time he plays blackjack. I mean, I don't know. But, yeah, it's a lot. It's $1.4 billion. It's a lot. But, hey, we're out of time. Of course, we've been deep in the weeds with Jason Bermas, as we are every Friday at 9 a.m., brought to you by River City's Reader. Always a pleasure, my friend. I'm super happy for you on the news with the monetization stuff for YouTube. Again, everybody, check out his movies. Documentary film member, obviously, Loose Change, the one that we've all heard of and probably already seen a few thousand times. And then, of course, on YouTube, you said search Info Warrior, and that's how you can get Making Sense of the Madness, your show?
You can search the Info Warrior, but Jason Bermas, Bermas. Type in Jason Bermas, and that is where you will find my channel. You'll find all my stuff, including my documentary films that are in a very, very convenient playlist. So you can watch Loose Change, Fabled Enemies, Shade the Motion Picture, and Invisible Empire, A New World Order to find, all free.
And if you watch all 5 in a row, you get $10 back. So, anyway, yeah. So, hey, man, thanks so much again. Happy for you. We'll look forward to talking to you next Friday, 9 a.m., and you stay safe out there.
All right, thank you so much, Aaron. Folks, that is going to do it. Thumbs it up, subscribe, share, ring that bell. We are monetized again on YouTube. Yes, yes, yes. I want to thank all those that have supported me in the past and continue to do so. Remember, it is not about left or right. It is always about right and wrong. I absolutely love you guys, and we will see you all on the flip side.